Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the top-tier brewing stand. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainashev and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings, my master. Okay, it didn't come out right. But anyway, hey, everybody. How you doing?
I'm Jamil Zainashev, my co-host, John Palmer.
Always searching for something new and different. And
Sexually
really
or brewing? And
brewing-wise.
And my good friend, Mike Tasty McDole, is here with us
in the
as
house.
well.
That's
He's
right.
in the house. He's also my co-host on a fine little show that we like to call Can You Brew It, where we clone your favorite commercial beers. You send in requests, we clone them. We get recipes and blind taste them side by side.
We do.
Yeah, and it turns out pretty darn good. And Mike is
We're surprising ourselves, actually.
essentially the master brewer there that knocks all those out for us. So, if you got
that's
questions,
a show I wish I could be there for. That would be fun.
It'd be fun to have others. Yeah, it's fun to be a taster in that show.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a serious debate. I mean, we really,
Yeah, we
go down and dirty in these things. We, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, everyone's like, that's clone, that's clone. Sometimes it's a little more split, and sometimes, we're all going not clone. So
Different, but better sometimes, maybe.
yeah. That's a fun show. I enjoy doing that. Well, let's see here. This is a live Q&A show. Actually, we do, like every third show now is one of these live Q&As. So if you've been emailing with all these questions you have, you can just tune in live on thebrewingnetwork.com. You go there, click that link that says, what does it say? Chat now?
Yeah, hit the chat now button.
Hit the chat now button, and you can join in. It doesn't require a password or anything. I think it has a field there for it. But you just type in whatever name you want to appear on the screen, hit the enter button, and you're in. And there's other people in there, and Justin's moderating the chat so he can get your questions and ask them here in the air. And, as long as they're somehow related to beer or brewing, we're not afraid to answer them. And the reason we're here doing it is our good sponsor, Blickman Engineering. BlickmanEngineering.com. They've got a lot of great equipment out there. They're real creative, building top quality equipment that makes your brew day easier and more consistent, and generally a lot more fun. I think with nice equipment,
Take some of the pain out of brewing.
Yeah, well, and I think you just enjoy brewing on nice equipment. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I like, that type of thing.
Well, it's like the sight gauge on the brew pots. You're able to see your volume right away. Takes the guesswork out. Takes some of the anxiety out. Have I collected all the word I was looking for?
Mm-hmm.
You can look on the sight gauge right there, and it tells you. Or if you're wondering about your mash temperature, the pots have their thermometers mounted in the side, which you can adjust to, so you can see it readily and gives you a reading right there. So they're convenient equipment,
right? And Blickman's always coming out with new equipment, new creations, new inventions, like that beer gun. Completely rethought the whole process of filling beer bottles under pressure. Change the way that people do it. And that's the kind of thing that they do there. So real cool. Check out the website. Check out their products. And if you get a chance, send them an email. Tell them you appreciate that they've paid for you to listen to the show for free. So give them some support. Same thing for Brew Your Own magazine. I write a column every issue on styles, and you can get BYO by going to thebrewingnetwork.com, and you'll see a big BYO logo. Just click on that, sign up, and half the subscription price goes to the Brewing Network, which is very generous of BYO. Also, if you get a chance, while you're there at the site, you can browse through the store, see copies of How to Brew, John's seminal work on, I think that's considered the Bible for learning how to brew now. I don't think
it's kind of surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was in the hotel drawer last time at the AHA conference.
Get rid of the Bibles.
It's next to Gideon.
Yeah, got to get the Gideons to start distributing. Yeah, I was on some forum or something. I told somebody said Brewing Classic Styles was the Bible. I said, yeah, we just need to convince the Gideons to start home brewing, and we'd be set.
Yeah,
that would really get distribution up.
Yes.
Yeah, John and I also worked on this book, Brewing Classic Styles. If you don't know, and you can pick up copies of that as well. And again, the profits go to the bottom line of the Brewing Network. Keep all these good shows going. The Sunday Session, Can You Brew It, Brew Strong, and that show that we really shouldn't talk about. All right. So let's get down to the questions. Let's take that first one and, kind of get ourselves wet.
Okay.
So to speak.
All right, we'll get right into it then with when making a sour beer, a good yeast question. Do we need to worry about yeast autolysis? That's his first part.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to know then, if so, what should the racking schedule look like, balancing leaving the beer on the bugs versus avoiding dead stuff?
Yeah, you should, in a way. Anytime you're going to leave a beer at warm temperatures, room temperature or around that, above cellar temperatures even, the yeast in there is going to eventually break down, and when it does, the cells release a lot of material that bacteria can feed on. If you have a large amount of yeast, it can actually affect the flavor of the beer as well. So on a sour beer, now keep in mind, if you were looking at at the end of fermentation, where you think all your yeast has dropped out and there's no yeast left in this thing, right? You've fermented for a week and you've let it sit another week and it looks brilliantly clear to you. There's still probably about 1 million cells per milliliter of beer there. And if you take water, pure water, and you add 1 million cells per milliliter, it just barely starts to look hazy or turbid compared to a sample with no water. I mean, you just barely notice that there's something in there. So that's how little visibly it affects. So if you actually remove the beer from the yeast at that point, there's still a considerable amount of yeast in there that is going to continue to drop to the bottom, continue to break down over time. So when you're making a sour beer, you start out with whatever yeast you're doing. Let's say the main yeast has flocculated out. Go ahead and rack that over to another container. Either you add your bugs there, or if you've had them at the beginning. Either way, it's fine. There's still plenty of yeast in there that are going to die, break down, provide food for the souring organisms. And if you find that you still have a huge layer of yeast after that, you can go ahead and rack it again. You don't want too much in there. The difficulty comes in, you don't want to do too many transfers and add too much oxygen. The more oxygen you add, the more acetic your sour beer is going to be. If you have Brett in there, or hopefully you don't have acetobacter in there. You really shouldn't. But the more oxygen the Brett gets, the more acetic acid or vinegar character it's going to generate. So if you're already in a oxygen permeable container, you can end up with too much. So you want to watch the transfers for that reason. So did I answer the question? Go ahead and rack it off the initial cake of yeast after the first week or two, and then you shouldn't have to worry about it after that.
Okay, and the same listener has a similar question, but about bottle conditioning a sour beer. Mm-hmm. He's got a couple of 18-month-old Flanders that are just getting sour like he wants them to be. And he wants to know what special care needs to be taken. Does the acidity cause conditioning problems? Will the yeast crap out? How long would it take to bottle condition a beer like this?
All right. So they're not in the bottle yet.
They're not in the bottle yet, so he's going to, and rather than force carb, he wants to...
that it can be dangerous to bottle condition sour beers because if you're not sure that the yeast have finished or all the critters have finished generating gas, you can end up with an overcarbonate or a shattering bottle. So that's one of the concerns. If you're sure it is, you can go ahead and add back some simple sugar and add some yeast, and it should generally carbonate. It depends on how acidic the beer's gotten. It can get to a low enough pH where things stop, but it's hard to say without testing the individual beer. So
you could check the bottles every so often. Make sure if they're getting too high, then you're going to have to refrigerate them to stop the process.
Right, definitely. If you refrigerate below 40 degrees, things slow down dramatically, and that's a good point, Tasty. And I would, I force carbonate and fill with a filler all the bottles. After that, I don't believe in bottle conditioning anymore. No. Reason being. There's plenty of, when I go ahead and bottle beer anyways, there's plenty of yeast already in there. So the yeast are absorbing the oxygen that may go in through filling. So you get that benefit. And by not adding more yeast, I don't get a problem with long-term storage with the yeast dying and creating off flavors in the beer. So I don't see any reason to... bottle condition any beers. I mean, the yeast are alive in there anyways.
There's no need to add more yeast for these beers.
Right. Okay. And no need to add any priming sugar either. Reason being, when I go ahead and bottle, I've still got about 1 million cells per milliliter, right? Maybe a little under that. Sierra Nevada, they filter out all their yeast and then they add back 1 million cells per milliliter. Okay. Well, so I got the same amount of yeast. Right. I'm not, so I don't want to add more, and you could add, the difference would be, adding some sugar back, but I don't think the yeast really need that. They'll pick up the oxygen regardless of whether they have sugar. So,
going back to that guy's question now, he said the beer is about 18 months old. And it looks like he wants to bottle condition it now to provide the carbonation. Mm-hmm. How much priming sugar? I mean, we're not going to add any more yeast. We're going to let the bugs that are in the beer do the fermentation to carbonate. Yeah. How much more simple sugar do you think he needs? Do you think he needs the typical 3/4 cup, 6 ounces, or maybe half that? Because maybe there is still some residual eating of the...
After 18 months, most of the stuff should be gone, I would think. So I would use the full amount, because even when you use regular yeast to carbonate it, although I guess the generation of CO2 could be different, but I would even toss in a little bit of yeast just to ensure you get some carbonation. Again, if it's super sour, some of the bugs stop working when the acid gets kind of high, and so do the yeast. So again, I don't do much bottle conditioning anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
When Blickman Engineering set out to design a great brewing stand, they knew it had to be strong, adaptable, and last for a lifetime. The top-tier brewing stand is now proudly available at BlickmanEngineering.com. It grows with your brewing skills and equipment. Start with 5-gallon coolers on its heavy-gauge stainless steel shelves. Then move all the way up to 30-gallon pots on the high-output burner tiers. Speaking of burners, the custom Blickman Engineering top-tier burners are extremely powerful, efficient, and amazingly quiet. They have safety stops to center your pot hot, and they'll last a lifetime and won't rust. The top-tier brewing stand allows virtually infinite combinations from traditional gravity systems to 2 tiers to completely horizontal. Configure your stand the way you want and have the freedom to change it at any time in the future. Your brewing stand should adapt with you, not force you to learn a new process. Visit BlickmanEngineering.com today to configure your top-tier brewing stand and to find a local Blickman retailer. You'll be surprised with all the flexible features and the competitive price. Start brewing with Blickman from the top tier.
Downtown Joe's, located in the historic Oberon building in beautiful downtown Napa, California, offers an award-winning brew pub experience from 8:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day. For 15 years at the corner of 2nd and Main, Downtown Joe's has been voted Best Night Spot 7 times and Best Brew Pub for the last 4 years in a row. Brewmaster Colin Kaminsky's handcrafted ales, like his Tailwagon Amber Ale and Catherine the Great Imperial Stout, are the perfect accent to riverside dining, live music, and a relaxing outdoor patio. Don't miss the Beer of the Month, special rotating taps, and happy hour all day Mondays. Visit downtownjoes.com to make reservations, peruse their extensive calendar of events, or just read more about their fantastic beers. Come enjoy the fine beer, food, and music. Downtown Joe's, the award-winning brew pub where you'll feel at home.
Where were we? You stole an oak barrel from the mist of Ravenwood, and Lord Zinfandel the Avenger is in pursuit. Do you drop the barrel and run? Hell no.
We need it for a Flanders Red.
I'm gonna cast Pediococcus damnithus on the barrel. Sorry, your ghosts are imprisoned in his winery forever. Ugh, I hate it when Greg's the brewmaster.
This sucks.
What do we have here? Orville Rodenbach?
Buzz off, guy. We got a brew session going. Is that an actual beer?
Yeah, I crafted it. I don't really use the dice anymore. I'm a 10th level beer nerd.
Are you a 10th level beer nerd? Do you get a long-lasting foam stand when you think about wheat malt? Then you're in good company at Northern Brewer. Northern Brewer has all your beer nerd needs, ingredients, equipment, and knowledge at northernbrewer.com. Plus, fast, cheap shipping, only $7.99 for the contiguous USA. And check out Northern Brewer's huge selection of dorky beer kits, including the pre-prohibition lager.
Perfect for steampunk.
And the single hop best bitter.
Now on cask and 10 forward.
Make 10th level at northernbrewer.com.
In the past year, the Brewing Network has been able to add 2 new shows, expand our studio capabilities and quality, and bring more beer information home to you than ever before. In no small part, this is due to subscribers like you. Thank you from all of us at the Brewing Network. Without your monthly support of any denomination, we could not bring you the very best in live beer radio like Can You Brew It, Brew Strong, and the Sunday Session. Haven't signed up yet? Join your fellow brewers in the BN Army. Sign up today at thebrewingnetwork.com for a recurring donation as little as $2 a month. Besides all the great live radio you'll support, every subscriber is automatically entered in monthly raffles for amazing brew gear like a conical fermenter, a temperature control system, or your own draft setup. Become a part of the BN Army today.
Hilo, what's it feel like?
Take awesome and multiply it by 2.
Yeah! Spraying live beer radio all over your face.
Can't get any better than this, baby.
It's the Brewing Network.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're answering your questions live on the air. I got my good buddy Tasty McDowell in studio with us, and also my co-host, and also good buddy John the Rock Palmer.
That's me.
The one who's greeting the cretins. All right, what's our next question up, Justin?
All right, well, we left off with bottle conditioning, and I've got more bottle conditioning. And this one's about bottle-to-bottle consistency. Vivek from Belmont, California, says he's fairly new to brewing. He's just bottled his 4th batch, and in each batch, he observed some wild variations from bottle to bottle in the amount of head and the amount of sediment that gets kicked up during the pour. He says, all my bottles are stored under the same condition. I open 2 at the same time and have a thick head on one and nothing on the other. Tried shortening the bottling time. I've done longer, and nothing seems to change it. So what can I do to make each bottle more or less the same?
Well, I had this is tasty. I had this problem when I first did my first few batches of bottle conditioned beer, and what I found was that if I didn't stir out of my bottling bucket, which I just added this new sugar to, I would get the sugar would tend to go to the bottom, and I was essentially siphoning off the bottom. So I would get basically putting an inconsistent amount of sugar in each bottle, and I noticed that sort of variation. So I would just occasionally stir that gently, of course, because you don't want any oxygen pickup. Gently, stir the sugars in your bottling bucket occasionally. It might help.
Same thing if you're adding more yeast. And also, one thing that it does have an effect is when you store your bottles, don't store them all tight together. Leave a little space in between each one, and try and keep it in an area where, if you keep some warmer and some colder, you're going to have variations in that. And one really common thing that may be happening if he's getting, a normal head in most of them and then a giant head in some, it's probably contamination. It's bottle contamination. So it's bottle or the process of filling the bottles, and and this happens a lot of times when people reuse bottles. They're just not. They're difficult to clean thoroughly. I mean, it takes some doing to make sure you get a nice, perfectly clean bottle, and that could be the case as well. One little bit of dust falls into a bottle while you're in the process of bottling. You've cleaned and sterilized them perfectly evenly, and it's sitting there, and dust drops in. That's enough to give you some wild yeast bacteria that can take it further. So that can happen.
All right, and Vivek has a second good question about adding sweetness to beer. He said there's a beer-hating element in my household, and while she's very tolerant of my brewing, I know things would be better if I could make a sweeter product that she'd enjoy. I've tried adding fruit and honey to my beer, but it always winds up fermenting totally dry. How can I create a fruit beer that still has a good amount of sweetness to it?
Well, you can use artificial sweeteners. Is one fairly easy way, because they won't get consumed by the yeast. And that's probably the simplest way. You can pasteurize your beer or add a like a wine conditioner, and it may not ferment out quite as readily. Wine conditioner is sugar with some sort of preservatives to stun the yeast, keep it from fermenting, but it's not 100%.
I guess the only reason he's worried about that too is that he's the bottle conditioner. So he didn't want to kill all the yeast, too.
What I would do, if it was me, would be I would get, some sort of syrup, and I'd put a little bit in the glass first, and then I'd add the beer to that, and just serve it to her that way.
Okay.
It's true.
I wouldn't screw up a whole batch of beer making it sweet.
Oh, yeah, it's true. I was thinking he could add some honey malt or caramel malt.
Yeah, and then less bittering hop.
Yeah,
cut way back on your bittering hops. Add some crystal malts, honey malts, things like that. They're all have a definite sweetness to them that doesn't ferment out, and
but that'll, as you said, that'll change the whole beer.
Right,
and he may be better off just tailoring it for his wife. With some syrup at the end.
Right. But if she likes something like, Fat Tire or something like that, it has a overall, not a very bitter beer, a lot of biscuity character. A lot of people like that. You can make a beer along those lines.
Or make her a cosmopolitan and get on with your brewing.
Right. Or divorce her, find somebody else.
All right. Peter wrote into you guys, and he found an article about drying homegrown hops in a microwave. He says, my Chinook hops will be ready for harvest in February, and he's going to do a wet hop harvest ale, but thinks he's going to have a whole lot left over and wants to dry them out. What do you guys think about the microwave drying method?
Don't know.
I would imagine the problem is it's going to add too much heat very quickly to the cell material of the leaves,
inside out,
and it's going to break down that leaf material. You want to slowly desiccate it. You don't want to boil the leaves because
you don't want to steam the hops.
Yeah, it's going to break down that cell material, and then I think you're going to end up with a slimy mess. Try it on a few, see if it works. It's not going to dry them. You would have to pulse, tiny bits of microwaves to heat it up and then, get it out of the microwave so the steam could dissipate and they could dry. I just don't think it would work very well. If you live anywhere where it's sunny and warm, if you get screen material from the Home Depot or whatever, make yourself a giant screen. Just spread them all out on there in a single layer on a nice day where it's warm out and there's a little bit of a breeze, and they'll dry in no time like that. That's really probably the best way to go.
You can use a hair dryer on the same setup at that point too, can't you? In between the two screens.
Yeah, or you build a box and the hops go on a screen in the box, and you make it in your own oast, I guess they call them, and you just input a hair dryer at the bottom, or even just a regular fan on a decent day. It doesn't have to be that hot. You can put a heating pad in there and a fan pulling air in, and just the air rises up through the hops on the screen, and real effective and cheap to set up. I mean, you can use cardboard box. I mean, it doesn't have to be manufactured anything really serious, and it'll dry your hops quite well. Take the moisture right out of them. So I'm just not sure about microwaves.
Yeah, you can buy food dehydrators too, which do a nice job. It's low, again, same thing.
Right.
Low heat, air movement.
Yeah. The only problem with those is I think it doesn't hold quite that much,
right.
And then I think you can make something cheaper.
I've done it before. I've taken the screen off my sliding glass door and used that.
Right,
just comes right off. Lay it across a couple things. Throw the hops out.
A couple of sawhorses or chairs or something.
You've got one already. Yeah. Nobody needs to build one.
Yeah.
You don't need to toast them. You just need to dry them out.
It's some
matter of reducing the moisture. So
and the higher the heat you go, the more I guess the more of there's some differences in the aromatics. Some of those oils,
right?
If you can use them for dry hopping, it's better to go with as gentle heat as possible. Of course, if you're not going to use them for dry hopping, if you're just throwing them in the boil anyways, all that, it doesn't matter whether you do it at, I think, 80 degrees or, 150. I don't think it's going to make a difference at that point.
Okay.
It may, but I don't think so.
All right, and a question for Palmer, actually. John, we had this question come through on the session, and we weren't prepared for it, so I thought we'd throw it over to you. And a listener had written in asking about what effect having a nickel container would have on finished beer. So
nickel-plated?
Yeah, well, he just said nickel, so yeah, nickel-plated. Maybe he's just talking about,
hammering out a whole bunch of nickels into a giant...
yeah. So it sounded the way he phrased the question was he wasn't talking about fermenting in it. He said in contact with finished beer. So what do you think?
Nickel platings are highly corrosion resistant. Nickel is not a metal that you want in contact with the beer during fermentation necessarily, because I forget what it does. It may be like tin where it causes haze or something, but the toxicity of it is not an issue. For if you're talking about a nickel plated pot or a nickel plated tube or a line or fitting, that nickel plating is highly corrosion resistant and the beer won't affect it. So I don't anticipate any problems like that. If for some reason you've got a nickel plated boil pot, that's probably not the best material to be using. It just as a general cautionary statement from a beer quality point of view. Again, toxicity is not going to be an issue, even though nickel is highly shouted as a carcinogen, blah, 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 blah. That's really overblown.
How about people that have nickel allergies?
Right.
Isn't that a common allergy?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And then see, it's a totally different mechanism where nickel dermatitis from rings and watches and earrings and stuff. Yeah, I mean...
so somebody with a nickel allergy, by drinking a beer stored this way, wouldn't necessarily have the same problem?
No. And when I worked for 3M in the orthodontics R&D, we would get that question all the time. Doctors would call in and say, "Hey, I've got this patient with a nickel allergy. What should I do?" And because everybody uses stainless steel brackets that contain 18 to 20% nickel.
Yeah.
And nickel titanium arch wires are 50% nickel. But the thing is, they may have nickel dermatitis where they break out on their surface of their skin, but they wouldn't have any problem in their mouth. Different environment, different sensitivity, different exposure. I mean, it changes. So I think what I'm trying to say is I caution everybody not to take nickel concerns too far. People get up. They talk about asbestos and beryllium and so on. Well, these things are only hazardous if you inhale them. If you're staring at a chunk of beryllium, it's not going to hurt you unless it falls on your foot. So, same thing with nickel. Unless you drop it on your foot, it's probably fine.
So go ahead and store it in that nickel container and drink that beer. And if you have a problem, it's John Palmer.
Right.
Really, and one final note. I mean, with any potential metal toxicity, your first sign of a problem is going to be a feeling of nausea if you are getting some sort of acute poisoning from it.
So you must have been storing your beer, Justin, in some sort of container that gave me metal toxicity.
I think so.
That's the reason for the nausea.
And I knew the answer to this because I had already asked Palmer before that happened.
I see.
It was a conspiracy. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
All right. Here's a good question about Eisbach. Ron says, I brewed an Eisbach, 1098 OG, 1020 final gravity. After primary, I racked to a corny. It's been at 32 degrees for about 10 weeks. Beer tastes great, but now it's time to freeze it, and I need help. I don't want to ruin a damn good beer. Any advice on the process and equipment needed to make an Eisbach? So what does he do now with it?
Listen to Doc's show on Eisbach.
Yeah,
that's right.
And he did make a mean Eisbach, too.
Yeah.
Well, and you essentially, what I do is I take, if it's in a corny keg, it has to be in something, you can't freeze it in like a glass container. So you take your corny keg, put it in the freezer, and every 15 minutes or so, give it first a good half hour. It depends on how cold it is. If it's already close to freezing, shake it a little bit, check it every few minutes, give it a shake, and you'll hear it start to get slushy inside. And what you're looking for is removing about 10% of the water as ice. And, whatever concentration you want to get. Generally, it's about 10%. So you listen to it get slushy, and then, you just put a jumper onto another keg, and then transfer the beer over. The ice is left behind. And once you've done that, you can open up the keg and see how much ice is in there. You can go ahead and melt it, put it into another, container, measure it, and I'll tell you how much you removed, so you have an idea of what your finishing alcohol and gravity is and all that. The thing to do is not to freeze it solid and then thaw it and then try and freeze it again and do all that. That really screws up your beer as far as I can tell. So, be very attentive. Don't go off and do something else and forget about it and freeze it into a block. That's not good.
Yeah, you have to watch it and make sure it doesn't over. Time I did it, I've done it twice. I use like a 2.5 gallon keg because I can't get a 5 gallon in my freezer. And I put it in there for about 4 hours, and I found out like at the first, and I did this twice. So, first about 4 hours, I noticed that all the around the edge of the container, it was forming a block of ice, and in the middle, it was soft. So, of course, I know the empty weight of my container. So, so I push all the liquid beer off of the out of the keg after the 4 hours. Then I measure the weight remaining, and I see if I've got the reduction I wanted or not. What I usually do is then I'll take the results of that and put that in the freezer for probably like overnight because it's got the higher alcohol. It's not going to,
Right.
4 hours is not going to make much happen at all. So, again, you need to monitor it because your freezer temperature is going to be different than mine. And then, you just push off, again, measuring, and you'll be able to actually, based on the alcohol content of the beer you started with and the weight of the water that you removed, you pretty much will know what the final alcohol content is.
Right. And don't over concentrate it either.
You're concentrating.
Ends up syrupy and alcoholic and not a good beer. So it's just to concentrate it a little bit. For a traditional ice bock. So don't go nuts.
All right.
All right. Well, let's take another short break, and when we come back, we'll get back to more of your questioning.
Keep your carboy cap on. This is Brew Strong.
We'll be right back.
Do you support the Brewing Network? Do you brew your own? Are you looking for an economical, fun, and legal way to do both? Subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine and do just that. All year long, Brew Your Own will surprise you, entertain you, and educate you with articles on beer and brewing from authors like the Brewing Network's very own Jamel Zalashev and John Palmer. Each issue is a full pint of brewing techniques, homebrew stories, tips and photos, projects to make yourself, and recipes for the avid home brewer. Get your tough questions answered by Mr. Wizard and polish your style accuracy with Jamel. A portion of every subscription goes to the Brewing Network, so subscribe today at byo.com/Brewing Network, or just click the BYO logo on the Brewing Network homepage and support a fantastic hobby and your favorite broadcaster. Brew Your Own, the how-to homebrew beer magazine.
Hey, what are you doing, man?
Writing a review of WLP 400.
What? You're reviewing yeast?
Yeah. White Labs has home brewer reviews of all their strains. Are you new to these interwebs? Check it out.
That's awesome.
White Labs, your source for great yeast, invites all brewers to visit whitelabs.com to read and write your own reviews of all their yeast strains. Get real-world tips and tricks from other brewers who have made the most of their vials and post your own experiences. It's another way White Labs brings you closer to the best yeast on the planet.
And send. There you go.
You misspelled flocculate, dude.
What?
White Labs. It's all in the vial.
Hi, this is Push from the Brewing Network, and I want to tell you about the Brewmaster's Warehouse and how you can get 10% off your next order. I'm a pretty techie guy, but I've never seen an online store like this. It's awesome. Go to brewmasterswarehouse.com and click on Brew Builder. You can whip up a custom recipe so easily even Sven could do it. Seriously, it's slick. You can share your recipe with your own logo and notes to the Brewmaster's database if you want. And the best part, it keeps a running tally of the beer you're building while you're doing it. Then, bam, click Buy Recipe, and your cart is filled and ready to go with helpful suggestions in case you forgot something. This thing is amazing. Brewmaster's Warehouse is run the way a home brewer would do it, with great service, fast turnaround, and $6.99 flat rate shipping. Brewmaster's Warehouse and the Brew Builder blew me away. Check it out today at brewmasterswarehouse.com. I'm serious. And don't forget to put BNARMY in the discount code box for 10% off your order. Check out brewmasterswarehouse.com. Cheers.
BN Army members, are you looking for a discount on hops? Keep listening. Nico's Homebrew Supply at nicobrew.com has hops by the ounce and by the pound. Choose from varieties like Amarillo, Centennial, East Kent Goldings, Holler Tower, Simcoe, Summit, Tomahawk, Warrior, Willamette, and more. And adding new varieties all the time, many for less than $20 a pound. Whether a couple ounces at a time or an 11-pound bag, all hops are shipped vacuum sealed and frozen straight to you. Nico's Homebrew Supply offers store-wide $5 flat rate shipping.
shipping and won't waste your money on unnecessary overhead or advertising. They're going bare bones and passing the savings on to you. The staff at Nico's Homebrew Supply loves to brew and is committed to keeping homebrewing affordable and accessible to anyone who wants to join in this great hobby. And for a limited time, use coupon code BNARMY at checkout for a Brewing Network discount. Visit nicobrew.com. That's NIKO brew.com for your hops and more. nicobrew.com, your bare bones buddy in the brewing business.
Hey, Push, the new brewery's looking good.
Thanks, Finn. Piece by piece.
Well, let's fire her up. Whoa! Is that a new kettle?
Yeah, just got it brand new, but paid half price.
What? And that blade scale?
40% off.
The new tap handle?
$5 instead of $13. Got a new regulator for the brew stand, too, but $5 instead of $25.
Dude, where are you stealing all this stuff from?
Where else? The More Beer deal of the day.
Announcing the Beer, and More Beer deal of the day. Every day, a new fantastic deal from big items to small that will blow you away. Boil kettles, carboy carriers, sterile siphon starters, digital timers. Watch morebeer.com every day for a new deal, and you just might find the item you've been waiting for at a price you cannot believe. Hurry, because stock is limited on most items.
And that sweet Guinness cap, let me guess.
The More Beer deal of the day.
Yeah, I knew it. Come on, let's brew something. Find the More Beer deal of the day at morebeer.com. Celebrity voices impersonated.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. Live Q&A with Palmer, McDowell, and Zanishev. And Crosley. Taking your questions. Looking pretty across the board.
That's right. My job. All right, Dave's in the chat room for the first time, and he's got a question for you guys. Is it possible to adjust the chloride to sulfate ratio post-fermentation? So he's thinking about experimenting by adding salts into the keg and trying to dial in a water profile for a certain beer. What do you think?
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. What effect would it have? I mean, I guess it would have just about the same effect, anyways. I mean, the impact on the boil definitely is there. Affecting things like pH and maybe formation of break material and magnesium affects hop utilization, I think, and things like that. But there are effects of chloride and sulfate in the drinking as well. So
yeah, I've been talking with Colin Kaminsky quite a bit about this. He's done a lot of trial brews with different ratios of chloride to sulfate. And his comment is that for lager styles, the highest you really want to go is like 2-to-1 chloride to sulfate. If you go above, say, 2 or 3-to-1, you start tasting salty effects. It isn't as pleasant. But with sulfate to chloride, you can get up to like 8 or 9-to-1 for a hoppy IPA and still have a positive effect in his opinion, with all the trial brews he's done. So if you know what the water was going into the beer, you can make a fair guess at what it is in the beer itself, and try increasing the salts accordingly. They should be fairly soluble in the beer. Mm-hmm. Don't go overboard, of course.
Yeah, and you could do it, in a small trial. Just get yourself a liter of beer, and dose that, and don't do your whole batch until you figure it out on a smaller
do it
batch.
in a pint glass, not.
Yeah. And that should be good.
What about phosphoric acid, for instance, adjust the pH after the fact? Sure. I know it's used in soft drinks as a flavor enhancer.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it be used in beer as a flavor enhancer as well?
I imagine it could.
Yeah, small amounts. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul has a question that I've had in the past. I think we talked about it on Can You Brew It? He's wondering what the best way to split up a yeast starter is when brewing 10 gallons and fermenting in 2 5-gallon carboys. He asked maybe about putting the yeast in his boil kettle, assuming he's cooled it down enough, and putting the yeast in there, and then drink. Before he drains it into the carboys.
Sure.
So what's the best way to split a batch of yeast?
That's an excellent way. Matter of fact, you can add it to the kettle, cover it, and let them start fermenting there in the kettle, and then separate it out into the two.
Then they'd really they wouldn't be sitting at the bottom. You're saying because they'd be up and moving around. Yeah. How cold would he have to get? You're a fan of pitching at your firm temp. Would you say he needs to get his kettle down to that?
No, but you need to get down to 70s or so.
Yeah.
Don't go mid 80s or anything like that. Get it down to a reasonable region, and let it go for a few hours, and then continue to cool during that time, and dump it to your carboys, and that would work.
Okay, Diff Dude in the chat room wants to know how a continuously recirculating mash affects the fermentability and flavor of final beer. He's actually Rick from Denver. It's his real name. So a continuous recirc in the mash.
Well, Tasty does that.
Comes out real good. Next question.
Turns out good.
Comes out great.
Fermentability?
And it might affect it based off of, it depends on...
What is the recirc? Is it any different than... you're just moving the liquor past the grain rather than the grain past the liquor.
I would say that, there's potential for it to change fermentability, but only in that, you're getting better contact, better movement of the enzymes in contact with the grains, and you're covering more of the area of the little bits of starch. And if at one point you're at a lower temperature versus, let's say, you start at 148 and you run that for 10 minutes, and then you go to 154 for 30 minutes or something like that. If you're not recircing and you do that pattern versus you are recircing and you do that pattern, I imagine you probably get a little bit better fermentability from doing the recirc. The recirc itself isn't necessarily causing better fermentability, but you're just getting more conversion at that lower temp a little more effectively.
You're moving the enzymes around for them. They don't have to
that's
migrate.
the only way it would really affect it. Do you got anything? Any different thoughts, John?
No, everything you said is correct.
Thank you.
Another aspect is the
Dave, it wasn't.
wort nutrition, the nutrition of the fermentation. There's studies that show that a more turgid mash provides more nutrients to the yeast, which can promote a stronger fermentation. And a number of years ago, I remember in Brewing Techniques they compared a RIMS mash versus a single infusion mash, and same amount of yeast pitched, etc., and found differences in clarity. I forget which, if they said one fermented more strongly than the other, but they found subtle differences in flavor between the two beers. More recent studies, in the professional brewing literature, has talked about the overall vigor of the fermentation as a function of clarification, and they concluded it was really kind of academic. You make adjustments for that, by adding yeast nutrient or pitching more yeast, and it made differences in vigor negligible or inconsequential, whether you depending on the amount of clarification you did. Germans or European brewers swear by recirculation and high clarification of the wort because they're looking for a much clearer beer in the package. English or American craft brewers don't do as much because they're not as concerned about the clarity of the beer. They're looking to get a good, healthy fermentation with what they've got. It just kind of depends on where you want to place the beer.
All right. Kal-El in the chat room has a question. When scaling a recipe up to make it an imperial, do specialty malts need to be raised as well? He's thinking of, kind of like Scottish ales, where the only factor that changes is the base malt.
Right. Well, it depends on what you're trying to achieve when you say imperial. If all you mean is more alcohol and maybe a little more body and more residual sweetness, then you would just adjust up the base malt. But just like if you're changing for efficiency. But if you want something more intense, like my friends Harold Gabranson and Peter Zine, they had one time brewed this imperial wit beer that was like brewed to barley wine type strength. And not only did they go to a higher alcohol, but they added more orange peel, more coriander, whatever they were adding, and brought all those flavors up as well. And so it'd be the same thing making an imperial IPA. You wouldn't just change the base malt; you change the hops as well. If you're trying to make something more intense, Deschutes with their their mirror or and also their the 20,
the porter,
the XX, they essentially just doubled the recipe, as I recall. So that included all the specialty grains and everything, and it absolutely makes it more intense. Those specialty flavors more intense. And if that's not what you want, then scale it back. So, but you can do it either way. Depends on what your goal is.
Okay. Anthony was tuned in today, and he says, I just brewed Jay-Z's Dark Strong Belgian Ale. OG was 1088, and it finished out at 1036 using a 530 yeast with a 1 gallon starter. He says it tastes great, but it's too sweet. Should I repitch some more 530 from a new starter? Or could I use the 001 yeast cake from a 7% IPA he has sitting around, I guess?
You can use the yeast cake. Here's the thing. That yeast cake is going to have some bitterness to it that may transfer to the beer, which may be okay if it's sweet. Also, it's probably going to have some hop flavor as well. Again, may or may not be what you want in there, especially if you used a lot of CTZ hops. If you do use a yeast cake, what you want to do is first get it active. So you'll take some whatever yeast you're going to pitch, and you're going to add that to some starter wort, and wait until the yeast get up and start, just forming a croissant on the top, and then add those yeast. Might be better to take a note from Tasty's playbook here and brew another batch of beer and with whatever yeast and but not something really hoppy or really bitter. And when the yeast rise to the surface, top crop that yeast and immediately throw it into your other beer, and that will probably work well.
Like brew a Golden Strong and just push that croissant right over to the next fermenter.
Yep.
Okay. Might have to pull out your Pro Mash memories here for this next one. Pilot 98's in the chat room, and he wants to know, can Pro Mash be configured for batch sparging in the mash schedule page, or is he missing something? I guess he can't find it. You guys remember that? You can do batch sparge in there?
I don't batch sparge.
I don't think so. Like the other software does, Beer Tools and Beersmith.
Beersmith,
I think they both have batch sparging settings or something. I don't know. I don't batch sparge. I mean, I have in the past, but there really wasn't anything to calculate, I think, because I just make up as much sparge water as I need, and then
when you collect your volume, you're done.
Yeah, when you get to your volume, you're done. So you just fill it up once, and then run it out, and then you fill it up again and run until you have whatever your volume is. But I'm sure he wants a better way of calculating it than that. I don't know. I don't think it does. They haven't updated Pro Mash in ages.
Yeah, it's true. And we've tried to get I don't remember his name. Tried to get him on the air to talk about
Jeffrey
it.
Donovan.
But We haven't been able to. He's a little unresponsive. So
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of questions that come through about ProMat.
Yeah, well.
Okay, Boulder Bay Brewing is in the chat. And he says, I made a yeast starter, and I ended up not adding it to my fermenter for 6 days.
Mhm.
And I think what he's saying is now he has, and it's been 30 hours, and I don't see any signs of fermentation. Repitch or wait a little longer.
Well, was it an active starter, or it sounds like it's probably still since he waited?
Sounds like it.
So
If he,
long.
yeah. That maybe he grew it up and then it went back to sleep.
Did he leave it warm?
No information. That's all I have.
I mean, if you leave it warm, sitting there warm, they're gonna eat up all their glycogen, and you're gonna have a big lag when you add it, and they try and start up again. If after the starter was finished growing, you put it in the fridge for 6 days, it should be ready to go. It's ideal if you use it right away, but 6 days it shouldn't be a problem. But 6 days warm out at 70 degrees, they burn through what little reserves they had probably.
Yeah, I probably need to get a wand in the fermenter and whip it up, get some air in there.
Yeah, it's been 30 hours. If you have one of these fermentations where, especially high gravity, you pitch your yeast and you don't see anything after 12 hours, between 12 and 18 hours, let's say up to like 18 hours, go ahead and hit it with oxygen at that point. But once you start getting too much past that, you don't want to necessarily add too much oxygen. I would question why this yeast hasn't been going. Something weird's been happening along the way. What kind of beer was it, did you say? What kind of fermentation temperature?
And gravity?
Warm it up. Kick the temperature up if it's, it might be too cold. And,
so you're not saying repitch, because that's kind of what he wanted to know. If you're worried about this yeast, wouldn't you repitch that?
You can.
Yeah. Okay.
Chances are the yeast is already growing and multiplying. It's just taking a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, and he probably has reduced cell count because maybe a lot of the cells did die.
Right. Or they're just so weak from sitting around warm. So that's why the oxygen will help. It'll give them more sterols for more replication for the fluidity of the cell wall and things like that. So
okay. All right. Proof Man in the chat room says Stan Hieronymus mentions in Brew Like a Monk that more yeast growth equals higher alcohols but less esters.
Uh-huh.
So he wants to know if you agree.
Yeah.
And okay. And then at what point in the fermentation timeline is that chance for higher alcohol production decreased enough for a temperature increase in his fermentation?
Oh, it's after like 48 hours.
Oh, okay.
You start cranking.
Wow, so it really does happen in those first couple days.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's all that initial period where there might be some growth happening after that, but usually not. But the growth actually limits ester production while it's growing. Now, there's other factors in there where if you grow too much, where you underpitch and you grow too much and the cell walls, become, the yeast have trouble maintaining, their cell walls, things like that, you can get other problems. There's other compounds that the yeast need to create, and during that creation, you end up with more diacetyl, you end up with a lot of things in the fusel alcohols. But generally, as long as they're growing, you end up with more fusel alcohols, those hot solvency alcohols, and you end up with less esters. Although, it's the alcohols that are used in ester production. So, what was the question?
Just about when he could increase the temperature.
48 hours. You can start ramping it up from there.
Okay.
What you want is controlled growth. You want you don't want too little growth. You don't want too much growth. You want a nice you want X amount of growth, and you want that to be consistent beer to beer to beer.
Okay.
If you're doing different styles, then maybe you want different growth. But if you're that same beer, if you're a production brewery, you want to get the same growth every time. You want to pitch the same amount. You want to provide the same nutrients. You want the yeast to be in the same health, the same temperature, and that way it's consistent growth. Excessive growth, too little growth are both bad for the overall beer quality.
All right. David has a question. He says, a while back, Jameel mentioned a key to brewing lower gravity beers like a mild is to decrease the efficiency, use a coarse crush, and decrease sparge. So he says, with that, then how do you get your pre-boil volume? Do you have to add water
you can
to
add
the
water.
kettle? So
Yeah.
you do just add water.
Yeah, and really, after all our malt crushing show, I would maybe just go, do everything the same as normal. Use a higher mash temperature, use everything the same as normal, and then just take your first runnings and add water to it. And that would be it. All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the Q&A show. Back after this.
Brew right. Brew smart.
Brew strong. This is Brew Strong.
From the stovetop to a camp burner to some kind of brew stand, most homebrewers follow some version of this progression. With each move, a homebrewer will often have to change a lot, if not all, of their equipment. Until now, Blickman Engineering brings you the top-tier brewing stand, the only brewing stand that grows with you. For example, buy a top-tier floor-standing burner now, and it'll bolt right to your top-tier brewing stand when you're ready for all-grain brewing. The top-tier brewing stand is perfect for 5-gallon to 20-gallon batch sizes. Its modular design is adjustable and accommodates everything from small footprint coolers up to 30-gallon pots. How does the top-tier brewing stand do it? At its core is a strong, heat-treated and anodized aluminum main post. On all 4 sides are built-in T-slots for the adjustable heavy-gauge stainless steel shelves and beefy burner tiers. The tiers accommodate any manufacturer's pots or coolers up to 21 inches in diameter. Best of all, not only does the top-tier brewing stand grow with your skills and equipment, but it easily knocks down for long-term storage or transport, too. The top-tier brewing stand from Blickman Engineering. Learn more at blickmanengineering.com and to find a local Blickman retailer. And start brewing from the top tier.
Wow, there sure are a lot of entries this year.
Yeah, what gives?
I don't know. It must be because of the new bottle shipping system from Clark Brewing Innovations.
You think?
Yeah, it's gotta be. The bottle shipping system provides protection for the bottle's most vulnerable areas during shipping. Plus, look how easy it is to stack and store the entries.
I like them because I don't have to unwrap all that silly bubble wrap, tape, and peanuts that most entries come packaged in.
Which makes it easy to ship and reduces waste. Now that's what I call an innovative solution.
Definitely. I wish every competitor used them.
Competition coordinators, have your competitors ease their shipping hassles and your packaging nightmare by going to www.clarkbrewing.com to place their orders for the new and improved bottle shipping system from Clark Brewing Innovations. That's www.clarkbrewing.com. www.clarkbrewing.com. You got it? Good. Now just ship it.
Nico, listen, our lawyers said that we had to do this for 1 hour, and after this, we don't have to talk to each other for 3 more months to the next meeting.
Kids, come on, let's get out of here.
I'm supposed to have more lines. I'm the professional. Hey, it's Sully.
And I'm Nico.
And we opened the 21st Amendment 10 years ago at 563 2nd Street in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from Giants Park, to make great beer and have a great time doing it.
That's right, because to us, the 21st Amendment is more than just the right to make beer. It's the right to experiment, to be innovative, and just do things differently. And so now, we're putting our craft beer in cans.
That's right, cans. You can find our world-famous Hell or High Watermelon Wheat Beer at Brew for Your Die IPA in the Northeast, Northwest, parts of the Midwest, and Alaska, in cans and on draft. So next time you're at your local neighborhood pub or good beer store, be sure to ask for 21st Amendment in cans.
Because everyone likes it in the can.
Tasty crack cans.
Tasty crack can.
Williams Brewing is your online resource for prompt delivery of quality home brewing supplies. Since 1979, Williams Brewing has offered the finest equipment and freshest ingredients and the best customer service in the business. Cut hours off your brewing sessions by using one of our 11 varieties of famous Williams malt extract. Our Williams Belgian Pale Extract is mashed with pure Belgian 2-row malt and a small percentage of Belgian wheat malt for an authentic Belgian character you just can't get from other extracts. Or check out our unique fermenters, 2.5-gallon kegs, paintball tank-based draft beer equipment, bottling aids, and much more. We even have our own line of precision hydrometers. Go to WilliamsBrewing.com to browse our vast selection. That's WilliamsBrewing.com. Orders placed by 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time ship the same day. Brewing is easy. The Williams way.
There's an app on the iPhone for just about everything, including beer. Apps for finding a pint of beer. Apps that look like you're drinking a pint of beer. And now, there's an app for brewing a pint of beer. Introducing BrewPal, the most all-inclusive beer brewing app for professionals and hobbyists that fits in your pocket and goes wherever you do. Recipe formulation that can be imported and exported with a customizable database. Mash and sparge calculations, yeast pitching rates, carbonation tables, and more. Available right now for less coin than a pound of grain. See BrewPal in action at brewpal.info and download it for your iPhone at a special introductory price right now. BrewPal, all the brewing software you need, right in your pocket.
This is www.thebrewingnetwork.com.
Sit down next to it, grab yourself a paper towel, and watch those yeast have sex.
You're listening to the Brewing Network.
Back to your hosts, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. Putting the testicles in technical. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. Live Q&A. I'm going to wrap up this show here with a few more questions, and then it'll be a couple more shows before doing another live Q&A. We do this every third show because we figured out that people actually like these. Chance to, for you guys to guide the topics and let us fill you in. If you enjoy this show or any of the programming on the Brewing Network, you should get yourself over to the main page of the Brewing Network, thebrewingnetwork.com. There's a Donate Now button, and what that little button allows you to do, you can, for as little as $2 a month, help support the Brewing Network and get all these shows free. Consider if you were to get all this information any other way, there's a heap of information on the Brewing Network that you get every month. If you were to get it anyway, it'd be a heck of a lot more than $24 a year. And with that, you also get, if you're a recurring donor, I mean, you can just donate once if you want. That's great. Any amount, greatly appreciated. But if you set up for recurring donations, again, $2 a month, you get each month. There is a More Beer donation giveaway, which is you win your new brewing gear. They give away. They've given away conicals. They've given away a sculpture, a whole big old brewing system, trips. Haven't they given away GABF trips?
Yeah, last year we gave away GABF.
A fully paid trip to the GABF, draft systems, other stuff. A really great raffle price. I mean, things that if somebody told you they were raffling it off and a ticket was, $2, you'd say, "Can I have 100 of them?" Serious stuff. So get there. That money goes to support all the programming and keeps these shows as good as they are. All right, what's our next question?
All right, Thomas from Sweden, I believe, is in the chat room today. He says, I have 10 gallons of Belgio Double sitting, and I've pitched... He says he's pitched too much yeast, so it got a little boring and watery, is his explanation of it. Its FG is 1008. So he wants to know, what do I do now? Can I dry hop it and make it taste better, or do I need to make another batch and blend it, throw it away, give it to his beer-hating friends?
All right. Well, me, I always just throw it away and start over. But Tasty, he's always willing to. Well, he doesn't have beers that go that bad, but he's always willing to take a beer that's less than his ideal. He has very high levels of quality and very very high expectations. So again, it's not really that bad a beer, but I mean, you'll take a beer that wasn't quite hoppy enough, and you blend it with something else, right?
Sure, I've done that.
Yeah,
No, actually, if it's a beer I like, it's like, for instance, if I brew one of my staple beers and for some reason it comes out too dry or too sweet or something, because it's a beer that I just go through my kegerator, I'll make another batch.
Right,
and
but it's not that bad a beer to start with. That's the only problem.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to say that. Like you're brewing bad beer.
Well, it is bad by my standards. Like
right.
It's not. It's not my beer. If
it's if it's truly watery and lifeless and not good.
That's.
As long as it isn't infected or contaminated in some way, I guess you could go ahead and do it. And it may be dry hopping or you could brew something up to add some character back to it.
How about adding dextrins to that beer?
Dextrins, sure. Some maltodextrin powder, You can boil up some maltodextrin powder, make a little syrup of it, and add that. Won't ferment out, and you could add that. Or, you could take some of that Belgian candy syrup.
Yeah.
You can get one of the real dark ones, pour that in there. There you go.
I like that idea.
Add character and sweetness.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Question about hop bursting. And I don't know what the term means, so you could maybe start when you answer with that. What is hop bursting?
Huffing?
But the question from Tour is, how do you balance the bitter hops with all the fresh hop aroma and flavor?
Right.
Would you make a bitter hop edition or just put all the hops in the last 15 minutes?
All right. I got a real nice article I wrote for Zymergy on MrMalty.com. You go there, and it's called late hopping or late hop aroma or something like that. And back when I wrote that, I had no idea anybody called this hop bursting. I didn't even know it existed because I hadn't heard of it before. But apparently people call this hop bursting, where you take all your hops and you don't do a bittering addition. You add it the last 10 minutes of the boil. And you just go massive amounts of hops. And in a 10-minute boil, you do get some isomerization of the hop acids. And it does form those bittering compounds, but they don't tend to be, very harsh. They tend to be, fairly, small amounts. And if you boil hops for a long time, the bittering does get kind of harsh. Okay, so one of the advantages of this is you'll get a bitter beer with tons of flavor and aroma, but it won't be very bitter. It won't be harsh. It'll be bitter, but not harsh. And you can extend that out. You can go 15 minutes or something like that, 20 minutes if you want. The professionals that I've talked to that are doing something along these lines, they almost always do like a 10 IBU addition earlier in the boil, like at 60 minutes. And then they'll do the massive hops later on. That's what Ale Smith is doing. I think that's what Matt Brynelson, I also interviewed him for that article as well. And I don't think either of them has ever tried an all late hop.
And why do they do that one addition? The pH issue?
And efficiency. You can't have massive amounts of hop matter, and also they feel like it gives some firmness to the bittering, and it's just. Also, I'm sure some of the tannins help with the formation of hop break.
Okay.
Probably as well.
There you go.
So you can add a little addition in there. I think that's what I have in the Evil Twin recipe. That's on also in that article. Or you can go to Northern Brewer, northernbrewer.com, and they've got Evil Twin kits. So you can actually purchase that from Northern Brewer. They send you either all grain or extract. So my Evil Twin recipe there. Check it out. I think they made a really nice kit of it, and you'll be quite pleasantly surprised at brewing that beer.
Okay. Another question about hops from Metabolics in the chat room. How do hop extracts differ in taste from traditional hop additions?
Well, there's no flavor or aroma. If it's an ISO extract, it's just bitterness.
Well, and they have some flavor and aroma extracts now.
Yeah. And yeah, Matt talked about those at one of the conferences NHC a while back. And one comment he made, which I think helps address this question, is that if you take like pure oils and try to combine them to create the kinds of aromas that you get in a naturally hopped beer from a couple of varieties, he said it really doesn't work. You don't take 20% trinolol and 4% myosin, and try to combine these and you just don't get quite the same thing. So a lot of the extracts you get are bitterness only. If you get some of the oil extracts, I guess the bottom line is they're different. They're different than what you'll get from a real hop or a certain combination of real hops. But if you combine it and work with it and use its character in developing a beer that tastes good, then that works.
Yeah, I think it's anything that you try in food science where they engineer flavors and tastes and to make packaged foods taste good and taste normal, and they'll look at things like I've got friends whose wives do this, where they look at a recipe and go, oh, okay, you're using eggs, it's and you're using salt and peanut butter, and okay, they break it down in all these chemicals, and they replace a lot of the actual foods with stuff that are easier for manufacturing. And if you go and buy yourself some of those products, they're not bad. I mean, they're very good and they sell well, but it's different than if you were to take the regular raw ingredients and cook it yourself. It tends to taste much better than something that's packaged for stability and manufacturing. And I think that's kind of the same thing you're going to get with some of these extracts. So, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. If you like it, then go for it. But
okay, all right,
that's
and
the difference.
Last question we have time today for in your yeast shows, you guys have referred to the slurry thickness. How do I determine the density of the yeast slurry? And he's talking about using your Mr. Malty pitching calculator as well.
Right. Yeah, the Mr. Malty calculator has a little slider there where you can select different densities and purities of your yeast. And here's I've come up with a technique so people could understand what various slurries look like. And if you buy the yeast book that I'm working on with Chris White,
if you finish
it's in there.
Yeah,
if I finish it,
right.
It's in there. So you just have to wait till fall to get your answer. It'll be
worth waiting for.
$21.95.
Great. See you next time.
Yeah. No.
Good question.
Yeah, good question. That'll help book sales. No, I came up with a way of really kind of figuring this out. If you take a vial of White Labs yeast. Okay, there is, I don't have all the numbers written down for me right now. The total volume of the vial is like 47 milliliters, and they fill it to the little dent in the neck where the neck starts to straighten out, and that's like 36 milliliters, I guess. And then the yeast portion, the bottom, is going to be like 14 milliliters. If you actually, if you take the vial, and that yeast, when it's packed down at the bottom, that's like a density of 8 billion per milliliter. That's an 8 billion density, I think. If you shake it up until all the yeast mixes with all the liquid, that's a slurry density of about 3 billion per mil. If you take that vial, take the contents out, add you add like 14 mils of water to it, you end up with about a 2 billion per mil. If you add 50 mils of water to that, you're looking at a 1 billion per mil density. So that gives you an idea of, several different common densities. And you can compare that to visually to whatever slurry you have, and that should tell you pretty close what your slurry density is, and then you can go ahead and input that on the Mr. Multi calculator. There you go.
Okay.
And the exact numbers are in the book, but that's pretty much pretty accurate.
Get you in the
what I
ballpark.
recall, yeah. But definitely, you shake up a vial. That's about a 3 billion per mil density, and I think it's 36. Pour it into a graduated cylinder, and then from there you should be able to add the appropriate amount of water to make it different densities.
Okay.
If you double the volume, then you've got 1.5 billion per mil. So make yourself up, different densities, and you'll figure it out. Dry yeast, you can figure out, make up a slurry with some dry yeast to figure that out as well.
All right. And that's all we had time to get through. I just want to say, sorry if we didn't get to your questions in the chat. The best way to get your questions in is to get them in early. We always send out a tweet and a Facebook, and it's on the website when we're doing these. So you can email your questions in as soon as we post that there's a Q&A show coming up, and it's the best way for us to get all of your questions answered. But the chat was really great today with a bunch of good questions. So thank you to you guys in there.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Tasty McDole, for coming in and sitting in with us. Tasty. You always have great insights into the brewing process and how to make that better. I really appreciate that. And John, it's always good to work with you. I just wish we lived closer together so we could hang out some more.
Yeah, really. I like to drink more of your beer, that's for sure.
Why, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
And if you get a chance, hit up our spectacular sponsor, Blickman Engineering. You can reach them at blickmanengineering.com. Check them out. They got lots of neat stuff for the brewer that makes your brew day better and makes brewing more fun. And if you get a chance, if you're listening live, I expect to see you all at the Brewing Network Winter Brews Fest, Saturday, January 30th, Linden Street Brewery in Oakland. Get yourself there. It's only $25, and food by Sean Paxson, live music, bunch of breweries. All the BN folks are going to be there, and it'll be a great time. And if we don't see you there, I hope you keep brewing a bunch of beer for yourself and for friends, and most importantly, brewing strong.
Brew strong, everybody.